Well, a very good morning or good afternoon to you, wherever and whenever you're joining me for this assembly today. It's great to have you with us, with me, and I've got a special message for you. And it starts with these pictures. I wonder what you think they have in common. What do you think they show us as they come up on the screen now? Have a little think. What do they show us? What do they tell us about maybe what we're going to think about in the next few minutes? I wonder what you thought. Because actually, they all have in common something. They all show us about change. I wonder how you cope with change, whether you like it or not. Maybe you like change more when you're in charge of it. Maybe you don't like change when you've got no control over it. There's loads of ways that we view change and that we go through change in life. I mean, you've changed in the last couple of minutes since I started. You've grown that little bit older. Maybe the weather outside has changed. Inside your body has changed as you've taken a breath. Loads of different ways that we experience change. It's part of our daily human life. It's inevitable. And at the moment, if we're honest, there's loads of changes going on, aren't there? With coronavirus, there's loads of changes that we've had to endure and cope with over the last nearly year now. The way we do school, the way we socialise with our friends, the way we meet our family. I wonder if that scares or worries you. Things might not be the same as they were and can leave us feeling hurt and confused and worried or anxious, sometimes even a bit lost. But that's natural, that's normal, and it's okay to feel like that. But it's how we cope with it, how we deal with it that matters. Because we can't move on and we can't cope with change unless we admit how we're feeling, unless we deal with those feelings, unless we share them, if we're open and honest with ourselves, as well as other people and those around us as well. Share how we're feeling so we can cope and deal with it together. Otherwise, we'll miss out on the future that's in store for us, what's ahead. We'll miss out on that if we're constantly hanging on to, the good old days. Well, actually, the good old days, there might be better days in store. And we can feel lost between the two, can't we? Almost like we're in the middle of nowhere without a map. We don't know the way forward. We don't know which way to turn. But I want you to listen to these words that I'm going to read now. Have a listen and have a little think about them as I read them. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. I wonder if you've heard words similar to that, or maybe those exact words before. Believe it or not, those words are actually from the Bible. Now, you might not have ever picked up a Bible. You might not have any interest in it whatsoever. You might not believe in God. You might not call yourself a Christian. But if we're honest, whatever we believe, these words are still relevant for us today. They can still mean something because it's true. There is a time for this and a time for that. There's a time actually to speak and a time to be silent. We know that being in school, don't we? But sometimes we can catch ourselves resisting those things. We don't like change. We don't know how to cope with it. I wonder if there's a time at the moment or something, a change in your life that you've been resisting, that you've been putting off. Maybe you're resisting to think about what school might be like, or socialising with your friends might be like after coronavirus. It's crazy to think about a world without coronavirus at the moment, isn't it? Maybe you're worried about what that looks like. Maybe you're resisting to think about it or plan for it. Now, as a Christian, Personally, I would ask God to help me in those times, to help take away my fear or the worries that I think and I feel about those times, to give me peace instead. But I want to encourage you today to trust that something good will come out of these situations you find yourself in, of the times where you're not entirely sure how to cope with change. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to cope. I want to encourage you to think and to trust that something good will come out of those times. Take a moment to think about the times where you're facing change at the moment. Maybe you need to change the way that you view them, or maybe change the way you deal with them. So let's take a moment in the quiet now just to think about those times that you're facing change at the moment and what you can do about it, how you can share it, how you can cope with it and look ahead. Now I'm going to pray, and you might not have any interest in praying whatsoever. That's okay. Continue to take time to reflect and to be still and to think about these things. But if you want to agree with what I say and make this prayer your own, then you can say amen with me at the end. Dear God, we thank you that in all the situations we find ourselves in, all the changes that occur, that you promise to be with us, that you don't give us anything more than we can handle with help from you. Give us peace when we're worried or anxious, and help us to cope with things in a way that's healthy. Amen. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. It's great to have been with you, and take care. I look forward to seeing you soon.